Hey there, it's Jennifer and I'm glad you're here. Today I have a shorter share for you. So this is a shorter type of video that I plan to mix in with my longer videos here on my channel, and I hope you like it. In this video, I'll be sharing a fun technique where you actually create a see-through window. You can actually see through the entire card. It allows you to take a simple card design and step it up with a really special element. You can do this with a variety of dies, but today I'm demonstrating it with a word die and its shadow die. So first I will do an inky background with some stenciling and ink blending, and then we will do the window technique. Here's a peek at the completed card. You can notice how that window is completely see-through, such a fun design element. Now for this card, I used the newest Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit. This is for April 2022. I love using their kits because they're tools that can be used over and over again. This has a 4x6 stamp set, these dies including the word amazing, little ink cubes, some embellishments, a blending brush, a 6x6 background stamp, and 3 layering stencils. These kits are a great way to build up your stash because the value is about twice the cost and the themes vary pretty big from month to month, so you get a good variety of product. All right, now I'm starting with some white cardstock and I'm putting that into my stamp positioner. And I have that cling background stamp that's included in the kit. I will use my Brutus Monroe stick and stamp mat that just holds your cardstock wherever you want it to be inside of your MISTI. You don't need the magnet when using that. I'm just under the habit of using that magnet. Now I'm using my anti-static powder tool since we'll be doing heat embossing. I'm inking up the stamp with VersaMark ink, which is a clear sticky ink. And I'll stamp that twice with VersaMark just to make sure I transfer a lot of that ink onto the cardstock. I will then add my white embossing powder. I use the Hero Arts white embossing powder, and I have for many, many years. And then we will heat set that. This will give us a white heat embossed image on white cardstock. Don't worry, we'll apply ink over this and you'll be able to see the white embossing. I chose to use Holtz Distress Oxide ink for the color to add on top. The reason I chose this ink is it's very easy to blend. It's very forgiving, and I want to start with a blended background. I will use pink, yellow, and blue inks and overlap them to create a rainbow look. You could use any dye or pigment inks that you want to here. Again, I just chose Oxide inks because they blend beautifully. And I'm choosing lighter colors here. Notice I took that pink up quite a bit, kind of blending it out, but not with much effort. You don't have to spend much time on this step. Now I used Kitsch Flamingo first, and now I'm using Broken China, applying that to the other end. Then I will come with Scattered Straw, which is a nice yellow, and do some blending in the middle, being sure to overlap with the pink area and the blue area. Where those colors overlap, you form new colors. We'll end up having a little bit of orange area there and green. It looks like I used 5 colors, but I really only used 3 and just made sure to overlap quite a bit. I then have a dry cloth that I will buff the extra ink off of the raised heat embossed area. That white embossing resists the ink we put on top, so I can easily wipe it away. Okay, now I thought I'd step up this background and add more color, the same colors but a little darker, using the layering stencils that are in the kit. As I mentioned, there are 3 layering stencils and they're super easy to line up. I will put my cardstock onto my Brutus Monroe sticky mat, and the stick will also hold my stencil in place. There are many different tools that you can use to hold your stencils in place as you ink, and you'll see me use a variety in videos. I just grab whatever one makes the most sense for whatever I'm working on at the time. And I knew that sticky mat would hold that stencil in place over there on the side. Now I'm coming in with Distress ink, and I'm using the same colors that I used before, but this is Distress ink, which is more of just a dye ink. This ends up being a little bit darker. You could use Oxide inks again and just choose a darker shade if you want to, but I thought this would be a nice match. Usually Oxide, when you put it down for blending, it gives a softer look. And then you can come in with the traditional Distress ink and add more color, a little bit of a darker look. I put some yellow here in the center, and again, I'm making sure that I overlap with the blue I just put down. You could just use darker shades of whatever ink. So say you did the beginning layer with just different colors of dye ink. You could do the second layer just with darker colors of dye ink. You're just wanting to add a darker color on top of that background over these stencils. So here I'm using the Kitsch Flamingo and the Distress Ink color and putting that right over the stencil. And I'm putting a heavy amount of all these colors down. This will just give us, again, a tone-on-tone look to our rainbow background. Now it's time for the second stencil, and I'll line that up. Now this time, instead of using the Kitsch Flamingo for the pink, I'm going to go darker and use the Picked Raspberry Distress Ink. For the yellow, instead of using Scattered Straw, I'm going to go darker and use some Wild Honey. For the blue, instead of using Broken China, I'm going to go darker and use Mermaid Lagoon. So this time I'm choosing darker colors just so we can have a bit more contrast. But really I'm sticking in the same color families, making sure to overlap in those transition points so we can just still have this rainbow blend with darker areas here and there in these flowers. This is a fun way to use your layering stencils a little bit differently. Normally you would just stamp this background stamp, use the layering stamps to color in your images and have a white background. This time I have a rainbow background with just darker areas in the flowers. Now I'm coming in with the third stencil. At first I thought I would just use white pigment ink over this so that these openings, the little leaves and such, were lighter. They had a softer color than the background. But I changed my mind and decided to use the same step I used on my first stencil, which was just to use the Broken China, the Scattered Straw, and the Kitsch Flamingo in a heavier amount of Distress Ink. Now, the white pigment ink really would have worked great here. It would have softened the color behind it, but I really wanted to add more contrast, more dark to it instead of light. So that's why I decided to do this in the end. But know that you do have the option of white pigment ink instead. All right, so now we can remove this stencil and look at this beautiful blended background with pops of color here and there in the stamped image. I once again will use a dry cloth to buff off any excess ink from the heat embossed area. By the way, in the kit, there are these flower dies that'll cut out parts of the background if you want to do so. I didn't use those today, but wanted to mention they're included. All right, now we have our background and it's time to trim this down. I'm trimming it down to be about 4 by 5 1/4 inches, so it'll fit nicely onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card. Next, it's time to add our sentiment, and this includes that see-through window for the word amazing. I am using the dies and the stamp set included in the Hero Arts kit. We have the word amazing, the shadow for the word amazing, and the stamp set that has lots of little sentiments to team up with the die. This combo is one that I can use over and over again because there are many different sentiments you can build with it. I encourage you to take a closer look. It's jam-packed with a lot of things. We will start by using the shadow for the word amazing. I have a white note card that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and that's just a little bit bigger than the inked background we created. I'm going to tape this background to the front center. I'm not gluing it just yet, just temporarily taping it. I will then temporarily tape that amazing shadow die towards the top center where I want my window to be. I will now run this through my die cut machine. The die will definitely cut through that colorful layer. It probably won't cut completely through your note card if you're using a heavyweight cardstock like I am. That's okay. Just remove your colorful background and then take the shadow die and pop it into the indentation that first go through did on the front of your card. So I'm just popping it right into the indentation, and this time I'll run this through with my card closed. So I'm taping that in place and running that through my die cut machine. This will cut through the front layer of our card, but probably not the inside layer. That's okay. We'll repeat the process again. Pop the shadow die right into the indentation that it made, tape it there, and run it through the die cut machine. Now that amazing shadow window is cut in the same spot on all layers, so we can have a completely see-through card. We need one more layer for the inside, and I cut this to be 4 by 5 1/4, which is the same as that colorful front panel. I chose to use white cardstock. You could use whatever you want. This I'm lining up behind our colorful panel. You can see it's the same size. And I will pop that shadow die right into the window, tape that together, and run it through our die cut machine. This will cut a window in the panel in the same spot yet again. Now this panel will go on the inside of our card. This will be the spot where we write our personal message. But I need this so that I can sandwich between the back of the card and this panel a piece of acetate that our amazing word will float on. So next I grabbed a piece of clear packaging. This can be thin, it can be thick, it doesn't matter. Recycled is best. And I'm cutting it just to be a bit larger than the amazing shadow window. Then I will tape this onto the back of the panel we just cut. I just used some quick liquid adhesive. This is Gina K Connect, but you could use tape if you prefer to, whatever you think will hold best. After that's in place, I'll put liquid adhesive on the back of this entire panel and glue it to the inside of our card, making sure that I line up the amazing shadow window. Now while that dries, I need to die cut the word amazing. Instead of using fresh white cardstock, I'm using those leftover pieces we cut out of the note card. These little shadow die cuts, I don't need them, so I'm just putting the amazing word right on it and cutting it out. Don't want those to go to waste. I cut 2 from white cardstock and 1 from black glossy cardstock, and I glued those together with the black glossy on top. Now I end up changing this later on, but at this point I thought black would look best there. Then, after these are glued together, stacked together for dimension, we will glue this directly onto that clear piece in our window, just trying to center it up in the window. Now, if you don't have a word and shadow die to do a see-through window like this, you could use any die to create a window. You could do a heart. So cut a heart through all the layers, have an acetate window, and then just put a small sentiment floating on that window. You could really use any die for this. For a clean look on the back of the card, I did cut one more amazing die cut and glued it to the back of the acetate, so you didn't see any of the glue on the back, but you could skip that if you want. Thanks to the stamp set that goes nicely with the amazing, I have a little sentiment I want to stamp on the inside, and we'll add one to the outside. Lots of different things you can build together. It was at this point I decided I didn't like the black cardstock for the word amazing. I thought it would look better in white. Instead of starting over, I'm just kind of scraping off with my craft knife that black layer on the top. It'll look rough when I tear that off, so I will just do another clean white die cut and glue that on top. And then I was much happier with the result of that. So don't be afraid to change, and know that even those of us who do these videos for a living, we change our mind all the time. We just try to make good use of your time by editing those steps out. But do know, we do change gears a lot. Now here I am stamping UR with black ink from that same stamp set, and I'll cut that down with my trimmer so that I can add this to the front of our card. I do want a little bit of dimension behind this so that it stands out against our busy background. So I have my little container of thin cardstock scraps that I end up cutting off the edge of my cardstock. I never let those go to waste. And I'm gluing 2 strips of that cardstock to the back of it, and this will give it nice sturdy dimension, and those scraps are much cheaper than foam tape. So I'll add that right above the word amazing. I also wanted to add some little accents, and I decided to do little die cut butterflies. So I grabbed this really old Hero Arts butterfly confetti background die. It has lots of different butterfly sizes. I glued 3 butterflies of the same size together to create stacked die cuts that would stand out against the background. And I glued the 3 different sizes of stacked butterflies around the word amazing. Then finally, I used my Tonic Aqua Shimmer pen to add a little bit of shimmer to the darkest areas of our background, just so it would catch the light nicely. So here's our completed card. When you look at it, it looks very simple, but it's see-through, which is a fun surprise and not hard to do. So I encourage you to try this with any dies that you may have, hearts, circles, little frames, anything smaller that you can do, like maybe towards the top, and then put a sentiment on will work. But if you have any word dies where the shadow is included, it works great for this. All right, there you have a somewhat shorter video. I'll try to make them even shorter in the future. If you're interested in any of the supplies I use here, they are linked below in my YouTube description. I appreciate the time you spend with me. I will link here to a couple other related videos using a similar technique if you're looking for more ideas. Thanks for visiting. See you soon and have a wonderful day.